Hello, hello, beautiful people. Angie Grimes, your quantum architect. And we are here to discuss alchemize your energy transit for the week of September 27th. These transit cycles last about 6 days apiece. So we're going to get a little bit more frequent in what's happening current in the cycles. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the 18th gate. It's actually down in your splendic area, and it has a lot of names. I like to refer to it as the gate of correction. This particular gate, I actually don't have in my chart as a defined area. But as you may or may not know, we all have access to all areas of the energy sequences as they come through. However, my son does in fact have this particular area of the chart. And interestingly enough, we've actually been coming up upon some little challenges that we've been dealing with internally in this household. So this particular gate is kind of near and dear to my heart at this moment. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the challenge state of this particular energy sequence. Built very deeply into the human genetic matrix is a deep sensitivity to imperfection. And it really is this particular sensitivity that gives rise to criticism and judgment. So, this can have a completely empowering or disempowering effect on you and others. And the reason for this is this particular channel of circuitry is actually a collective channel. So it's always fascinating to know. And it's actually a projector channel that relates to logic. And I want to bring that up to you because I think it's really valuable for us to understand that in some ways we are just looking for the storyline that wants to improve what we have going on. And I think that that's really important. You know, we can look at judgment in a really negative light, even in the negative capacities. And I think there's some value to looking at it either which way with which you prefer. However, I also think that there is, even in the challenge state, there's definitely some beauty there. And it really is the impetus that we want to do better. And we can see the areas that need correction for that to happen. This particular gate actually begins in your childhood. And it has a built in need to challenge authority. And I've known this for a long time about my son. For any of you parents out there that have your children with this 18th gate, God bless you. There's a constant, real need to challenge the first real authority in your life, and that's your parents. And so there's this constant pushback of challenge. And really, if we break it down, challenging is a fundamentally healthy thing to do. It really is part of our innate urge to become unique, to become have our own voice, to stand out in the crowd, to become who we are meant to become. And this particular gate actually comes into play when we're dealing with our mental state of growth in our auric body. So it's actually directly related to our auric body. I tell my son frequently, would you rather have peace or would you rather be right? Because there's a real need to be right in this challenge. There's a real energy that is super forceful and it's super pushback. And there's a space for that and a time for that, but it can really get out of control very frequently. And it's during the period of our mental auric body that our future opinions get laid down and the capacity to judge is actually tested and forged. Now, I want to talk about the age with which this happens because it should come as no surprise that actually we solidify our mental body from the age 14 to 21. So, we talk about teenagers who are trying to identify who they are in the world and have their own voice and stand up for themselves. It would come as no shock that this particular energy frequency was really alive for them in this time period. Now, what's really fascinating to me is that the key to the process of this lies more in the frequency of the parents than it does of the child. Um, in this space, if the parents make the mistake of taking this process really personally, the child actually never fully makes the transition through this biological phase, and they become stuck at the challenge low frequency as the parents are. Now, as parents, if we are not getting stuck in our own judgment or self-judgmental patterns, which Lord knows, I know is easier said than done, this phase can result in true adulthood for our child. Now, as you can see with the way that we are currently trending, most children actually never make it to true adulthood, but they stay trapped in the deep low frequency patterns of judgment for the rest of their lives, at least until they address it through the shadow or all of the other work that many of us are here to do. This particular challenge gives rise to a collective phenomenon in the world known as the victim mind. And this victim mind is a conglomeration of all the undermining judgmental thought patterns throughout the world. If you sincerely examine your own thoughts during a typical day, you'll probably discover that a great percentage of your thinking is affected by this particular victim mind. You are allowing your mind to be influenced by the collective negative thought patterns of the whole of humanity. They're not yours to own. Now, this probably comes as a huge shock because we have our own mental dialogue and we think, well, how can that be the victim of humanity? It's an inner world of gossip, complaining, and worrying. Most of us complain inwardly about all aspects of our lives, especially the people that are closest to us in our relationships. And we worry about issues such as money and health. And it's ironic that this exact kind of thinking keeps us from being abundant in terms of both our wealth and our health. Now, you may be sitting there thinking, Angie, it is absolutely human to complain. And I would not disagree with you. It is human to complain. But I'm going to tell you that it creates a negative frequency in the human aura of both the complainer and the victim. In other words, what happens is the more you complain, the more you damage yourself and the entire world. Now, if we want to talk about the moral of it, judgment gets a bad rap in the modern world. We can talk as being non judgmental as though it's one of the highest goals in life. In fact, the truth is, it's impossible not to judge because judgment is the way in which the human mind differentiates, it's the way that it thinks. What defines the challenge frequency of this particular victim mind is that you identify with what you think. Now, think about that for a moment. In other words, your judgments define your identity, and that makes you feel more secure. That's a big one. It's a really, really big one. I would venture to guess that the more you think that you are your opinions, the more you have to defend them. It's about the need to be right here. It takes a loosening and a lightening of your identity to let go of your need to be right. I would ask yourself the question that I ask my son all the time. Would you rather be happy or would you rather be right? Answer that question honestly for yourself. What do you get from being right? How do you show up differently when you feel correct or right in the circumstance? The one thing that matters is how seriously you take your own judgments. And the way that we can move through this, mm, this is how things get blown out of proportion, where we have our own lens we're looking through and we're looking to in a space that we have the need to be seen and correct. We perceive ourselves as separate from each other. And to challenge another person is to create a division within yourself. Now, I want to be clear that it does not mean that you should never challenge others, but it does mean that you need to remember that the other represents something inside of you as well, and that you're being given the opportunity to resolve that discord within you. Can you imagine if we started to look at everything that way? What are you seeing that you're holding on so tightly to? And how do we resolve that discord with which is in you? I think that it would be an incredibly different world if we chose to look within first, because that reflects and impacts what's out here. And I know that that's tough to understand until you've done it. I really, really understand that it's like, what is she even saying? It makes no sense. The less personally you take life, I promise you, the easier it becomes. Now, now we're going to talk about what we can do to move through this judgment pattern. And keep in mind, all of us are in it. All of us are part of it. All of us have been in it because we live on this plane and we have gone through being a teenager and understanding that you don't necessarily even understand what's happening. And you're just trying, you have this urge to challenge. Now, I want to talk about the way to move through it. Oh, it's so good. From the moment a child is born, an innate urge inside its DNA begins to explore the boundaries of its environment. We are biologically imprinted in 7-year cycles. The first 7 years critically test the integrity of the physical world through the development of our physical foundation, our skeletal structure, muscles, basic physiology, and movement. The second 7-year cycle sees the development of our emotional life as we pass through puberty. We learn how to handle sex and the way it governs our basic identity through attraction and repulsion. The third 7-year cycle is our teen years, when our thinking develops extremely rapidly and we adopt a mental structure made up of many levels of judgment and opinion. Now, this particular facet of these three phases of our early life are built upon each other in a logarithmic fashion. Now, this means that the problem encountered in the first cycle will appear again in the second, at the same junction, and in the third. And it plays a crucial role through continued testing of the outer environment. It's looking for constant biofeedback so that the child can orient itself in the world in a healthy manner. It's huge importance at the developmental level, as it governs the very infrastructure of our physical, emotional, and mental health. Wow. This is a particularly huge gate. Now, the patterns that emerge in your life depended on what happened in the earlier two cycles. And you always have the opportunities to heal aspect of earlier cycles. But depending on how you and those around you deal with these challenges, you can also imprint these low frequencies even more deeply into your psyche. Hmm. Now, the third cycle is the last chance parents have to help their child reach that true adulthood. And if they're not rooted deep in their own integrity, they will fail to create the proper environment for the child to pass cleanly through the most challenging phase. Now, normally parents have to set some really strong boundaries during this teenage phase. But the secret is to be able to hold your own space without reacting to your judgments or self-judgments. You have to learn to stand back from it and trust it. If parents truly understood how critical their role is during this phase in their child's life, they might act with less judgment and feel much surer of themselves. Integrity is a vibration, and it means far more than just holding fast to your values. This word is actually a word often used by architects and engineers to describe the strength of material structures. Integrity is a deep physical attribute, and it's actually a function of your immune system in maintaining the tensile strength within your body. For many people who have to resolve issues from their teenage cycle, it will take a full 7 years, whether it through therapy, body work, mind work, mindset, or some other sustained system that targets your conditioning. Integrity is born into the human vehicle, but it also has to be earned, whether during the teen years or later on in life. It remains forever once it's developed. And then you can hold that frequency through thick and thin. You will see a living miracle growing before your eyes. I hope that you got something from this today. And I encourage you to answer those questions. Even if you do not have this defined in your chart, these are valuable questions for you to ask yourself. I hope you have the most amazing week. And I'm going to try to pop on a little bit more frequently to change the cycle of the energetic pattern through the week. Have a good one.